You have jaundice. Comes with the weight.
Did you say it comes with the weight?
Yeah.
What are we waiting for?
Hey!
Let's get started. Welcome to the Bean.
The Bean Holes, it's Eric and Nate, the Bean Holes. They're really pretty great, so shut up and listen to them talk. Eric and Nate.
Welcome to the Bean Holes. I'm Nate.
I'm Eric.
Today we're talking about Stan the Man Lee.
Yes, out of many of the creators and famous people we lost this year, there's only one that stands high atop that mountain. Stan Lee, as Kevin Smith put it, is your modern day Mark Twain. And if you look at the amount of work he created in the short amount of time, what? You don't agree with that? Or are you thinking about it?
I think like someone like Jon Stewart is closer to a modern day Mark Twain, but you go ahead. Hey,
that's not my words. It's Kevin Smith's, and I don't know, when he said it, I agreed with it, because if you just look at
He's quite a prolific creator of entertainment.
Yeah, modern myths, the creator of modern myths, and when you look at the amount of work that Stan Lee helped create in the short amount of time that he was with Marvel, it's incredible, and I don't think there's another person who at least worked in fiction who has created so much in such a little amount of time. Maybe second to that would be Rod Serling, writing, I believe it was 200 episodes of The Twilight Zone,
mm-hmm.
wrote single-handedly 100 of them, all individual stories that didn't have any other connections with each other,
right.
Completely underappreciated in his writing style. But Stan Lee, right next to him, just having his hand in so many different pools, it's incredible.
Yeah, he certainly created an incredible fictional universe, and had a hand in doing it, several iterations of it.
Yes.
And love him or hate him, the Marvel Comics, the MCU would not be the same, or arguably would not exist at all if not for Stan Lee. We've talked before about how he had a generous ego, and a lot of people have felt over the years that someone like Jack Kirby maybe got short shrift when it came to giving credit, but that is certainly not to say that Stan Lee was not the central figure in creating Marvel. You need somebody to tell the talented people, the other talented people, go out and do this thing, and it's going to fit in with this other thing this way.
I mean, and a perfect analogy is that Stan had people making puzzle pieces, but he was the guy helping to put it together. So he definitely does get a lot more credit, but I don't think it's undeserved. I just think we need to, as fans of the medium, to give equal credit to Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, because I don't think it's undeserved credit.
Right.
Because he did do so much and created so many characters. We have had episodes dedicated to some of these characters. We've had Spider-Man, we've had Black Panther. We haven't touched on the Fantastic Four, but he also helped to create X-Men, Doctor Strange, the Scarlet Witch, Ant-Man, Daredevil, Thor, Hulk, just almost every major character in the Marvel universe right now.
Yeah.
So, in his time with Marvel, I mean, he was working in comics in the 1940s, all the way up. He was working with Timely Comics.
Right. Timely was the name of the company before, as they absorbed some other companies and expanded. They eventually changed their name to Marvel.
Yeah, in the 1960s became Marvel, and he only worked for Marvel until I believe the 80s, mid 80s. So 20 years under the Marvel banner. Not the Bruce kind, but
or the Bob kind.
So yeah, 20 years working with Marvel as a central creator, and had so many names under his hat that he was doing at the time at Marvel.
Yeah.
And especially one of the things a lot of people who grew up at that time and read those comics, if you talk to anyone who was an active Marvel reader, there's like one thing they all agree with, and that they looked forward to Stan's soapbox, which was his way of talking to the readers. Readers would send in questions, or he would just talk to them about comics in a section right at the end of the comic, and that was like a beloved thing for fans.
Yep. Very cool.
And that was one thing that DC didn't have, is they didn't have a Stan Lee, kind of like a used car salesman.
Well, DC did have a character based on Stan Lee, who I think was in fact a used car salesman,
like an actual car salesman.
An actual character, yes, actual used car salesman. They didn't have a figurehead / mascot, and certainly that allowed sometimes room to breathe for a lot of their premier titles. Not as much pressure for Batman and Superman to make sure their storylines coincided and didn't step on each other and all that. But for the most part, it kind of hurt. I think it hurts now that there's not somebody that people point to and like, oh, that's the guy that made everything.
Stan, one of my favorite stories that Stan Lee has told, because the guy would love to talk and love to tell stories. He talks about Bob Kane, who created Batman, and that they would go out to dinner, and I think almost whether or not someone recognized Stan Lee, Bob would like shout at people like, you know what I created? Batman, and would draw Batman on like a napkin, because he wanted that same recognition, but unfortunately Bob Kane wasn't putting himself out there in the books like Stan was, or wasn't like a face.
He wasn't creating a bunch of other characters. He was really, talk about taking credit for other people's work. Stan at least worked constantly and really did have his hands in like 50% of the characters that they were putting out there.
Definitely listen to our Joker episode where we discuss
Bill Finger, who actually made all the modifications.
Just a messy
Bob Kane's
creation.
Batman was blonde, no bat ears,
had a gun,
yellow and red suit, Bill Finger is the one that redesigned the character. I would say Bob Kane, he more accidentally created Robin, or at least the look of him, because when it came to actually adding Robin in as a character, largely based on Robin Hood, the look of the character was a lot closer to Bob Kane's original Batman designs.
Wow. Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that Stan brought to Marvel Comics and the creation of these characters was to make sure that not only was the superhero fleshed out, but their secret identity as well, their human identity that they would be walking around with. And obviously his biggest creation is Spider-Man. Spider-Man has been the mascot of Marvel Comics for as long as I can remember, and never before had we really had a hero that had to deal with the same teenage stuff that you all do at that time. You know, you have to juggle school, you have to juggle friends, family. Peter Parker then has to juggle being a superhero in New York, and that's what got a lot of readers in, because if you were reading DC, you were reading about a superpowered alien, you were reading about a billionaire who has a lot of money and all these tech, and all their heroes seemed kind of disconnected, whereas Spider-Man and a few others that were introduced seemed way more human than they did as superheroes, and that's what kind of dragged readers into reading them and why they're so beloved. And we kind of talked about earlier that a lot of those heroes had to worry more about their actual secret identities than they did their superheroes. Like they had to. Peter Parker couldn't just ditch school or drop out and just be Spider-Man full time. He had to worry about those other commitments, whereas Superman, he doesn't have to work at the Daily Planet and be Clark Kent. Bruce Wayne could just be Batman full time. He doesn't have to go to parties as Bruce Wayne. So there's a little bit of that, once again, that human element that Stan brought to the table, and definitely with the help of Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, fleshed that character out too.
Yeah. I think that unlike Bruce Wayne, I think Clark Kent, though, is what makes Superman interesting.
Yep.
And I think they did try to keep that at the forefront quite a bit. But you're quite right. I mean, it's Thor often had no secret identity.
Yep.
At times they did the Donald Blake thing. But Hulk is like something that Bruce Banner doesn't want in his life at all. Spider-Man it's something. It's a responsibility.
Yep.
It's not something he's necessarily driven to do by just a desire to have fun, which is I think that's more. That one I like with Captain Marvel, though.
Really?
It's like it's wish fulfillment is really the great aspect of Captain Marvel, but that's a whole other.
Or Shazam,
thing.
right? You're talking Shazam.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I slipped back into the right way of thinking that we all have to deny forever.
Yeah, Billy Batson wishing, like, that desire to be a superhero that he sees, like Superman, getting that wish and going, I'm going to be a Superman now, and that's.
Yeah.
But that's definitely what makes that character unique and fun and.
But no, I largely agree with your point that the more human lives of the Marvel characters is something that really helped people connect. Tony Stark's greatest struggle for a long time was alcoholism, not other people that he had to fight in armor.
Yeah.
And
Tony Stark is just as interesting outside of the suit as he is inside of the suit.
Yeah.
And
if not more so.
Yeah.
So yeah, many good points there. I would say the X-Men.
I was thinking they're probably the ones that least have to. Like, Wolverine doesn't have to go to real life and interact. Like, he could just stay at the mansion and be Logan and be Wolverine. He doesn't have to make appearances.
Or James Howlett or whatever he wants to call himself that week. But still, it's the team dynamics, the interplay between the different members of the team is often the more interesting aspect of the stories.
Right.
So, all right, good point there.
Yeah.
You had mentioned Kevin Smith, and I wanted to really point out the fact that Kevin is perhaps the reason that Stan Lee got into on-screen appearances, and we're the richer for it.
Kevin Smith is one of the luckiest fans of comics to be alive, but because of the work he became known for, got to mix in all the things he loved. So by the time Clerks came and became a hit, he was offered from Universal to make basically another form of Clerks, which is Mallrats. And in that writing, wrote a character that he was like, I'm going to bring in comic books. The Clerks I brought in Star Wars, now I'm going to bring in comic books. Wrote a character in the script that was basically a Stan Lee-like character. And the producer on Mallrats, when he kind of read the script, said, what's with this character? And I forgot the character's original name, but
it's Dan G.
Kevin Smith said, it's kind of like Stan Lee. And the guy's like, why don't you just add Stan Lee into it? I know him personally. And Stan Lee worked on Mallrats in a very humorous way. Didn't want to basically, if you've never seen Mallrats, Stan shows up at a central part of the movie to kind of aid in the love life of a character, to give him some advice about a love that he lost, and you shouldn't let a good woman go. But that's not true with Stan, because he's had a loving wife his entire life, never had a love that got away, and made sure to add in a part of the movie where he kind of says that was kind of a joke, or like that he made that up because he didn't want to upset his wife. But because of that on-screen moment, it kind of catapulted Stan into anybody who was a fan of his and who would make a movie would go, bring him on, he's willing to do it, which is eventually what led to the comic book movies wanting to include him in cameo appearances, which is, if you ask kids now, that's where they know him for. Oh, that's the guy everybody points out in the Marvel movies.
Yeah, I don't know what he did or why he's there, but that's that guy.
Yeah, there's that old guy again in the movies. At some point in the 90s, Marvel was not doing too well. Even though
comic sales were down in general.
Comic sales were down in general, and at least from what I remember, like Spider-Man cartoon was out, there was Spider-Man video games. They were pushing out all these properties, and eventually they filed for bankruptcy. Yeah. Stan Lee then helped them sell the film rights to a lot of their characters.
He created a plan to sell off film rights to raise more money for the company. And because remember, DC was
they were purchased by Warner Brothers at some point.
Yes, yeah, and they had some real hits between the '79 Superman movie, '89 Batman movie. Might be getting my years wrong by one or two.
No, '89 is when Batman came out.
But those were successful, good superhero movies, and things like The Punisher starring Dolph Lundgren. Captain America, starring the son of J.D. Salinger for some reason.
All TV movies, by the way. Or the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, was that in theaters? I know the Captain America one was on TV.
I don't know. I don't think they were ever originally intended to be TV anything. They just weren't that good. Of course, the Roger Corman
Fantastic Four.
Doomed Fantastic Four movie.
Which I think you can watch the entirety on YouTube.
Yes, you can.
And let's not forget the great Nick Fury TV movie starring David Hasselhoff.
Yep, that was 90s.
Yep.
Even there, I think in the 70s there was a Doctor Strange movie, and that special effects were not ready for a Doctor Strange movie, even into the 90s, I would say.
Yeah.
We're lucky we got there by now, and the current Doctor Strange movie is fantastic visually, but yeah, the Marvel movies were a joke, and DC, partly by spacing it out, doing one good thing here, one good thing there, making sequels until it was not great. They did it with Superman 2 was okay, Superman 3 not so much, Superman 4 was an abomination, much like Eric's sickness on every episode we record lately. And doing the same with Batman, really good, pretty good, not so great, oh my god, why did you make this, which I think would be your favorite.
Yeah.
Oh my god, why would you make this? That's Eric's favorite. Okay,
oh my god.
Point is, Marvel's movies were not doing well. DC's were doing well, and so there wasn't a lot of prospects here. And so even though they were trying to sell off these rights, not a lot of people considered them hot properties. And the things that have become the MCU now were
like back burner
heroes.
Iron Man, no one wanted
Thor,
to touch.
They were not top tier heroes.
If you look at the first three big series that came out of these film rights, X-Men, Spider-Man, Hulk, that was your trifecta. After those kind of became hits a little bit here and there. Of course, X-Men was a decent enough hit. Hulk kind of faltered. Spider-Man was huge. They started with some other characters. Daredevil starring Ben Affleck. Ghost Rider starring Nicolas Cage. They started going, okay, let's get in the back catalog of some of these heroes.
Yeah.
None of those heroes were ever desired to be touched. No one wanted to make a Thor movie, Captain America, Iron Man, and Marvel on their own in 2008. Well, being released, but right earlier than that, decided, well, we'll just start making the movies on our own.
Yeah, Stanley actually, he was working on trying to get Sony to just buy everything, which thank God for us they didn't, because they did a pretty good job with the first couple Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man was the only thing they were interested in. But if Sony had purchased all of Marvel, or all film rights, we'd be looking at a situation like we've got in the DC world right now, where all the movies are ultimately controlled by the same company, who doesn't quite seem to get it.
Yeah, I mean,
even
Warner
though they
Brothers
do own the comics.
Warner Brothers, at some point, even after buying DC, they didn't start putting in a bunch of movies in production. They just kept like, well, Batman and Superman are what we're going to worry about. And I feel bad that almost one of the moments where they kind of came out of their comfort zone, which was Green Lantern, like backfired in their face. Yeah. Like, fine, we're not making any more of these movies, but Marvel's killing it. But anyway, Stan Lee has become such a fixture in cameos that it's kind of even a joke. In the new Teen Titans Go movie, they actually Stan Lee cameos in it and says, and I quote, "I don't care that this is a DC movie, I love cameos." Which I recommend anybody listen to Kevin Smith's eulogy about the guy. He loved being on screen. He loved acting. He just wanted to put himself out there and show the world that he was worth more. And even his wife, during I don't know exactly where the interview was, but it was in the last few years, she actually teared up saying that he's such a good poet, and no one will ever read the poems he's created because it's just not. I don't know if it was anything that he ever wanted to release, but according to her, he is a lot more versatile than we've ever known of the guy. So, such a huge loss to the world of entertainment, and such a groundbreaking figure in not only the world of comics but in entertainment. With what we have now in the MCU, it all kind of comes back to Stan Lee and a handful of others at Marvel. So it's, yeah, I mean, he will be greatly missed in this world, but his creations will live on for years to come, generations to come, and I don't ever see it being a time where Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America are not popular characters. So we salute you, Stan Lee, over here at the Beanholes, and keep on beaning.
The Beanholes.
Look it up.